want you to know there are no free giveaways in spite of what you may have heard. But happy. I'd like to have everybody in the back who is taking time out of their busy days to come and visit us and introduce themselves. Sorry with that bigger gentleman right there in the middle.
There's a lot of us. See what you're talking about, me. Ron Storto, Biltmore Farms.
David Nutter, City Planner.
Thank you.
Peter Polay, Sonic.
Robin Gregory, Asheville Homestay Network.
Dawn Chavez, Asheville Greenworks.
David McCartney, Hotel Eris.
Chris Morrow, US Cellular Center.
Clayton Howard, Chambered.
Michael Gibain, Biltmore Farms. Robert Foster, Biltmore Farms.
Sarah Kilgore, Explore Asheville.
Jody Stevens, Explore Asheville.
Jeff Bradford, Asheville Buncombe Regional Sports Commission.
Jane Anderson, Air. Joey Robinson, City of Asheville.
Deborah Carroll, City of Asheville.
Rick Bell, Engadine, Annie Evans, and Kaylor.
Dylan Davis with the Asheville Citizen Times. Tim Love, Buncombe County.
Good morning. Sam Power, City of Asheville.
Susan Russo Klein, Robertson Stevens.
Rick Randall with Mountain Express.
Hey everybody, I'm Jason with AshVegas.com.
Ken Stamps with Navitat.
John Ellis, TDA Finance Committee.
And then, last but not least, Holden Mesk with Sunshine Request.
Thank you, Holden. Before we get into the business of the day, I want to congratulate Leah Ashburn for absolutely killing it. Dancing with this video of her performance at some point in the future, but we're not sure about that. And also Chip Craig for his 20th Mount Mitchell Challenge accomplishment, which is pretty incredible. It's like a marathon and a half up 3,500 to 4,000 feet, something in that range. Wow. 20 in a row. And his birthday.
Jim, I have to leave at 2:15. I was trying to pick a place to slide that in.
Thanks, Joe. I won't take it personally. Okay, could I get an approval, someone to move to approve the meeting minutes from January 30th? Those in favor? Okay. Financial reports, Autumn. Autumn is not here.
I guess I'll have to do it then.
Okay.
Good thing I showed up. Okay, turn to page 1. And if you notice on column 2 on page 1, that's the third month actual. Total revenues is just over 1.5 million. Total expenditures, just under 1,929,000. Revenues over expenditures, total 647,000, which added to the year-to-date actual for the net change fund balance of just over $4 million. In column 5, which is the percentage of budget used, occupancy tax year-to-date is 60.5% of budget. Expenditures are 39.1% of budget. I just want to make sure I'm not looking fast. Column 7 is prior year percentage change, and you'll see that occupancy tax is up 9% from prior year. Going to page 2, this is the monthly revenue summary for the Tourism Development Authority, and this shows a operating fund, which is 75%, and a project development fund, which is 25%. For the month, it's up 3%, year to date 9%. Going to page 3, this shows the product development fund projects. There's a total budget of 14.9 million for projects. For the admins, there's 331,000 for a total of 15.3 million. Actuals to date, 2.4 million, and then admin is 117,000. This need to note that this does not include anything that's going to be approved by the board today. Those will go on the next report.
And can I just note for TPDF that with the ordinances today, that will exhaust all of the available funding through this fiscal year. So all of that money is fully utilized.
Page 4 is the monthly balance sheet, so this shows a snapshot of where we are with assets, liabilities, and fund balance. And then page 5 through 8 show the comparative tables and charts for sales data. Page 5 is room charts, is a chart for room sales by month, as well as comparative data from the prior year, trending above prior year and 3 years average. Page 6 provides a breakout by category. So we have hotel, motel, vacation rentals, bed and breakfast. Page 7 provides a history of total room sales by month. Again, you can see the current year room sales are exceeding prior year. And then page 8 provides further information on room sales by the category.
Thank you, Don. Could I have a motion to approve the financial reports?
So moved.
Those in favor? Okay, thank you. Stephanie, President's Report. We'll carry you back. You have so much cool stuff.
Yeah, we
How did you not-
really have such a packed agenda today. I thought I would just ask. No. Yeah, your packet contains the board meeting schedule for next year. We'll start sending out meeting notices for that. I think you all have the retreat, the March retreat on the 22nd, 23rd on your calendars. We're looking forward to seeing you at the Grove Park Inn. We'll be hosting the first day, and then we'll be here on the second day. I think you're well aware of everything else. If there are no questions. Oh, 21st and 22nd? Is that right?
21st
John?
and 22nd.
That's, yeah, let's see, it's Thursday and Friday. It's the 21st and 22nd. Thursday, Friday, sorry about that.
And thank you to Gary for hosting us on that first day. Okay,
Thank you, on
on to Mike Conzen, GAV guy.
just by way of brief introduction and reminder for the recommended a set of awards with this year's funding. Further recommended to the board the suspension of the application-based process for 2019 to embark on a process for long-term planning. The board agreed with that recommendation and directed staff to work with PGAV to develop a process to create a plan, and that brings us to where we are today.
So for the board members, it's tab 5 for anybody who's reading at home.
Thank you, Stephanie. So, and thank you all today for the opportunity to present our proposal for this exciting process. And it's been kind of a long time coming, but we're excited to show you how we intend to proceed from here and what some of the key aspects of this are. My name is Mike Conzen. I'm the CEO of PGAV. We're a company based in St. Louis, Missouri. Personally, I've been coming here to Asheville since 2001, and I love this community. Come here both for work and for pleasure as a tourist, but also had the opportunity to first become engaged with Explore Asheville with respect to the Tourism Product Development Fund in 2015 when we did some consulting work related to streamlining the application process for this. So it was a good introduction for us, and we became well versed in the legislation that enabled this process, as well as some of the history behind it. And we're extremely fortunate to have Chris Cavanaugh here as our local partner. I've known Chris for a long time. He and I have worked on many projects together here in Asheville, but also around the United States. And I still blame him for not including me on the project that he worked on in the Swiss Alps. So, oh, the French Alps, yes. But actually, it's really fortunate to have Chris, who really is a tourism and marketing expert related to this here in your community, because he knows the community well, but he also knows best practices throughout the United States. So just a quick introduction to PGAV. We were founded in 1965 in St. Louis, and we have about 145 people in our company, and our practice is global. And I would say about 60% of our work is in the United States and 40% is in several other places around the world, and largely related to two key focus areas, one of which is tourism and destination planning and design, and then the other one is community planning and economic development and finance planning as well. And so, as you'll see, our team represents both of those aspects. We've worked in more than 200 communities throughout the United States, and many of these projects are related to this kind of interesting intersection of tourism and community planning and economic development. So this project's very exciting for us because it's going to draw from a lot of our strengths.
And as Mike mentioned, I'm the local subcontractor on this project, and there's really four roles that I bring to this particular process. I mean, this is a very brief summary of what I do as a consultant, but my first role is as a consultant who's worked in about over 50 different communities around the U.S. and France, but most of them have not been nearly as glamorous as Chamonix in France. My second role, in addition to bringing that experience to the table, is I used to be on the Tourism Development Authority Board 15 years ago, a long time now. A lot's changed with both TDA and Asheville since then. I also bring a lot of expertise on occupancy tax. I may be the only person who's read all of the occupancy tax legislation in North Carolina, and that is an illustration of how sad my life is. But I bring a non-legal expert opinion on occupancy taxes, in particular how they work in North Carolina. And lastly, I'm a resident of the area. I've been here for 24 years and provide that perspective on the process as well. So that's, I'll be basically the boots on the ground, but you'll be seeing these folks and the rest of the people that you're about to meet from BCTDA quite a bit as part of this process.
You had to mention France at least 3 more times.
Just don't forget.
Yes, it's hard to. So as I mentioned, there are several different kinds of expertise called upon with this process, and these are just a few of them that I wanted to highlight. Obviously, there are dimensions of tourism planning involved in this, but in addition to that, that has to be informed by market and feasibility analysis. We obviously want to target projects that are well thought out in terms of their impact. Urban design, the city of Asheville is going to be someone that we'll be working with, but also to augment this through our tourism-related expertise as well. Community planning, public engagement, development, finance. Those are all important aspects of this thing that are going to be necessary to inform the process and to guide it to a successful and meaningful conclusion. This is just an overview of our team, and I'm going to give my partners here a chance to introduce themselves. You met the first two guys on that slide.
I'm John Gassman. I'm from PGAV Destinations. I've been with PGAV for 25 years. All my career there has been involved in destination design and planning. And so my background is in architecture. Every project I've worked on gets into a deep dive of the culture and the community of the destinations, as well as design background. So coming off some fun jobs from backgrounds of multiple rounds of public engagement, whether it be in places like Vancouver or Niagara Falls, or recently on the project at the Alamo in San Antonio. So all of our projects that I've been involved in over the years have been not only involved in the design side, but also a deep dive into the culture and the understanding of the community. So I'm excited for this opportunity.
Good morning. My name is Andy Struckoff. I'm the Vice President of PGAV, and I lead our planners group. The focus of our planners group is really on implementation. And we work really hard with each community we work with to listen to them and understand their community's preferences, their plans, their vision for the community. We also help them understand how to implement that vision. The focus of our work is on planning towards implementation, and that's what we really value.
Thanks, Andy. Two more people who are not here today, but who will play important roles on this are Jenny Ryan and Catherine Gilbert. Jenny are part of Andy's planners team, but importantly, they are experts in public engagement and community process. And so we wanted to make sure that our team was well rounded out as far as those aspects of it. So as we proceed into this process, Jenny and Catherine will be helping to develop that. And they also love Asheville as well. In fact, Jenny just did a vacation here with her family around the holidays, so she's well grounded in that respect.
Okay, so this project is meant to be very comprehensive and very involved. It has a lot of moving pieces associated with it. Briefly, and we'll go into the meat of the process here shortly, you can see as a general overview, this is really meant to build upon the application-based process that the Tourism Product Development Fund has had for the last 17, 18 years, since it was first authorized by the legislature in 2001. It's building upon the legislation that already exists, and also building upon some of the guiding principles and parameters that have been established for that process. At the same time, it's an opportunity to expand the amount of community input that we have as part of this, and perhaps just as importantly, collaboration with a wide variety of different public entities. That includes local and city governments, that includes potentially educational institutions, and other major stakeholders in tourism in Asheville. As noted here, we want to find the alignment between the legislative mandate of the fund, again, that law that guides how that money is invested, the priorities of local residents, and the opportunities to manage the tourism impacts for this very large and growing industry. There are a number of objectives associated with this plan. And again, this is meant to be a very comprehensive, very big and forward-thinking process. First, work collaboratively with the community to develop a long-term strategic investment for public projects through the Tourism Product Development Fund. As a reminder, the TPDF is a fund that was established first in 2001 and then later revised, and the process was also later revised through some inputs of PGAV via a separate project that they worked on several years ago in 2015. It's a tourism product development fund for investing occupancy tax revenue in capital-based projects. That's how the legislation is written, and at this time, that's how we're going to continue to proceed. But we have an opportunity here to gather a lot more input as part of this process to decide how those dollars should be invested in the future. Second, coalesce municipal and other partners around the strategic plan, outlining a long-range vision for implementing those capital projects. Up till now, the TPDF has invested in a lot of really good projects, many of which are used by visitors and residents alike. But we'd like to see it become more proactive rather than reactive. This is an opportunity to build some consensus on what are the projects that are best going to serve both visitors and the community, and to do that in a long-range planning process. Third, preserve and protect community character and the destination experience. It's important that, given all of the emphasis we put on marketing this destination, that we have a very desirable place that for visitors to visit, but also for residents to live in. Next, enhance Buncombe County through new community projects within the scope of the TPDF fund that I just mentioned that contribute to quality of place for residents, workers, and visitors. Support the implementation of placemaking. Placemaking is a term that has gained a lot of notoriety in the last decade or so. And it could mean very small projects that make a difference in both the residential and visitor experience, but it could also mean very large projects that contribute to the sense of place of what Asheville and Buncombe County are. And by the way, this is, I remind everyone, a county-wide project. This is the Buncombe County Tourism Development Authority, so this has to be a county-wide project. Next, continue efforts already in place to attract overnight visitors through the development and enhancement of destination assets. Again, giving us a reason to continue to market the assets as to why people come here in the first place. explore opportunities for financing and developing longer-term investments of significant impact. That's something, again, we have not had the opportunity to do. There is provision within the legislation to do things like debt service and support debt service of local government institutions, but that's not something that we've taken advantage of thus far as a community. Next, support high-quality design to enhance and preserve with the community in mind. And that's certainly where a lot of the technical expertise that PGAV brings to the table, but also their experience in a lot of communities. They have a lot of experience in understanding the debt service process, for instance, and have worked with a number of communities on those types of projects. And then last and not least, sustain the economic vitality of tourism in Buncombe County that's critical to the growth and financial health of local business. And supporting many of those small businesses is already a lot of what TDA does through its emphasis on marketing. This is hopefully going to continue to build upon the emphasis and strength of small business in this community, continuing to make this a great place to live and work and visit.
Thanks, Chris. So the next several slides are going to talk about the process that we've developed. And I can tell you that this process was put together very thoughtfully with a lot of input from a lot of people. And I think it's important because how this process is conducted will have a lot to do, I think, with the buy-in that the community has with it and also the effectiveness of the process as it yields a tool for you to use proactively going forward. So there are 4 phases to the process that will play out if this is approved over the next several months. And the first one, phase 1, is about assessment. And so we'll show you what we mean by that, but roughly stated, we want to ground this process in fact-based discovery and in research that will help inform how we go forward. Phase 2 is discovery, and this is where we will go through an intentional process of engaging with other public partners and try to understand really what thinking is already out there as far as potential projects go, and try to incorporate that thinking into this process. So this process will be informed by the work they've already done to date and work that they would do collaborating with us. And phase 3 is that collaboration. So the point is that once we have all this information, there's an opportunity here then to enhance these projects, to make them more effective both for the community and for tourism here. And I think a lot of the important work of this project overall will be done in this collaborative way. And then finally, phase 4 is prioritization. You know, hopefully we yield a great set of ideas, a great set of plans and projects that would go forward from here, and to go forward with a sense of how they can be prioritized. You know, we can't know fully how all the funding sources will come together for this project, but having a sense of priority will guide the use of TPDF funds and other funds as well to help put priorities in order and help make sure that the best projects, the projects that have the most impact, can be done. Another thing that I wanted to talk about overall with this process is something that we thought a lot about as well, and that is how the process will involve engagement. And so one of the things I want to emphasize here is engagement will happen in every phase of this process, and we've highlighted a couple of things that are going to be important elements of it. The first one is that a community leadership council will be formed, hasn't been formed yet, and developed to participate in all phases of the process to be a method of doing community engagement, the research and assessment that will happen especially in phase 1, and also public workshops. And so this group, this leadership council, will play an important role, and so how that group is formed is something that will become an important step as we move forward. And then the second part of this is that we're going to have a steering committee comprised of TPDF experts to provide functional oversight for this project. So they will make sure we do our jobs. They will make sure that we follow the process in a thoughtful way and don't leave any aspects of that out. And they will represent the BCTDA in that aspect as well.
What do you mean by experts?
I'm sorry?
Experts?
I think these are people primarily who have had experience with the TPDF process, you know, former committee members and so forth, so that they know how it works, they're familiar with the legislation and so forth. John and Andy are going to help me as we walk through a little more detailed sense of these phases.
Thank you, Mike. So this, Mike kind of gave an overview of each determine strategies for further development. The first step here is to convene the Community Leadership Council. We'll probably move beyond the Community Leadership Council, get them together and ask them for some input as we begin thinking about plans we need to review and understand, and questions we may need to ask people as we think about formulating our online engagement survey. We know that the city recently completed a comprehensive plan. We know the county and other municipalities have plans as well. We'll want to review those and understand those. We understand public entities' plans, preferences, capital improvement plans, goals and objectives going forward into the future. And we'll also look at best practices. We'll look at some of Asheville's peer communities for other municipalities in Buncombe County, so we can understand, are there any other communities that have dealt with some challenges that Buncombe County may also face? So because the mayor of Asheville noted yesterday in her presentation, there's some unique challenges in Asheville associated with the growth of the tourism economy overall. And so we'll look how other places dealt with that, and if so, how do they deal with those kinds of challenges, those kind of unique characteristics. And we'll look at financing options. This is where we start to build the financial toolbox, so to speak. We'll look at the TPDF, we'll look at other financing mechanisms, grant programs, versus statutory finance mechanisms that may be available in North Carolina to facilitate the implementation of plans and projects we have before us in this space. We'll also start digging into the local market, conducting a market analysis. We'll start reviewing the local economy, which will entail us reviewing some demographic and economic data we have access to. It will also require us to talk to business owners in the community and understand, so we can understand and hear from them directly, how seasonality affects them, how growth in the tourism economy affects them, what works well for their businesses, what challenges do they see, what opportunities they see. We'll also look at the retail market. One thing we do a lot of is help communities understand opportunities in the retail market. Look at, in this case in particular, we'll look at what retail is supported by visitors, what retail is supported by residents, or are there opportunities for growth in that sector. And the lodging sector as well, we'll look at, and we'll talk with members of the lodging profession about how they view seasonality, how it impacts their business. We'll look at trends in occupancy and revenue per available room. We'll look at the pipeline of hotel rooms currently on the books, and we'll look at what that means for future absorption and future development. Just kind of look at the placement of the hotels in the area throughout Buncombe County, understand that, and maybe look for places might make sense for future development if there's additional demand evident in our analysis. And we'll also look at mobile data. One thing I think would be instructive as we look at mobile data is it'll tell us how people get to Asheville, and once they are in Asheville, Buncombe County, largely how they move around, how they get from place to place. And in that, I think we'll start to learn and see a picture of where people congregate, where there's clusters or heat maps of activity, how people get from place to place will inform, I think, some of our thinking about capital improvement plans and other things, so that's kind of where we start to put together a holistic picture. We'll also conduct some online engagement early on. Put together a branch survey for visitors and residents so we can understand their community preferences and priorities. So the deliverables, what we'll come up with at the end of this task is an existing conditions analysis report summarizing all of our findings and observations through each task I just enumerated. We'll deliver that via presentation to the BCTDA board and also at a public forum with Community Leadership Council.
So the deliverables at the end of phase one, what you really have in hand is a good holistic picture, right? We use that term a lot. So what you have is the deep analysis, understanding the strategies, and phase two is the discovery phase where you take all that, you're on a well-grounded understanding of the picture, and now we start to, we say, assess the needs and opportunities. What we're really doing is diving into the projects that are under consideration, right? And so, of course, we start out by reviewing with the steering committee, but the core of this is really that bullet point number 2 in phase 2, which is really we're doing multiple project reviews with the public entities and municipalities. What that means is having work sessions with city staff to understand those projects that the city has and always considered in the past and what they're considering for the future. Again, with the county staff, other municipalities, other public entities. So really what we're looking for is a comprehensive picture of all of the projects that are out there. Understanding that there will be multiple work sessions, right? You can't understand all those great projects in one session. Again, these might be iterative, but our goal is to really do a deep dive in understanding. It's the end of that, we also want to make sure that we end this phase with a forum, right? A presentation to be able to tie together that great deliverable in phase one and also what we're starting to see in phase two. So when we talk about the public partners and the tourism stakeholders at the end of this great longer discovery phase, it's a way for us to step back and present all of that to a larger forum of folks. And so when you think about the deliverables at the end of this phase, it's a whole lot of understanding of a lot of projects that come from multiple sources and multiple understandings. So as we dive deep into that, we'll compile a summary report of all those potential projects. But we also, the important part is to be able to start to relate those to our analysis and our research in phase one and pull that together into a presentation and turn that outward. And so we have that presentation with the public partners, collaboration forum, and the tourism stakeholders at large. So when you think about that, so we did analysis and research, and then phase two is all about compiling the projects and how they relate to each other. The exciting part is when we get to phase three. And so Mike spoke about collaboration, but also Chris spoke about proactive, right, and placemaking. And I think this is really where that proactive word starts to come into effect. Because what we're doing now is we have this great picture of all the potential projects out there. If we can evaluate some of those potential opportunities, what we anticipate is we're not only going to find these great projects, but what we're going to be able to, through an iterative process, to sit down again with the city planners, with the county planners, with the groups that we had already reviewed those projects, and now how can we tweak, how can we adjust certain ones of these projects to take more full advantage of their goals, whether it be community goals and be able to enhance the projects that are considered. Sometimes you're going to find a synergy, you're going to find a project that's over here that's being considered and they haven't quite talked to the group over here. What would happen if you have a synergy between those two projects and the sum of them become greater than the whole? So we see that a lot of these opportunities are going to come by placemaking, by being able to sit down and have an iterative design process with the planners that have already considered them, with our team. So bringing our expertise with other expertise that's already there. This is the proactive, iterative process that we're hoping for through the collaboration. So these series of meetings with all of these public partners and stakeholders, we are also going to facilitate public input to be able to go through this process, right? To not only share our ideas, but also start to get some feedback. To really start to develop those management urban design strategies, again, from both a tourism standpoint, but also a community standpoint. The deliverables, these deliverables are a little different, right? Phase one and phase two is a lot of reports and a lot of lists. This is where you get into some more products where we get to start to envision and start to create tools for not only ourselves, but also the public to be able to understand a little bit more about what we're talking about. So they include site plans, image boards, and sketches and renderings to start to show the promise of what happens when we enhance some of these projects in a different way. Potentially 3D models, right? Whether they're massing models or whether they're rendered ones, you start to be able to give people a sense of place and understanding of how you can start to tweak certain projects and have a greater sense of placemaking and deliverables for tourism and community at the same time. At the same time, we start to do budget allocations. We know that these projects might be small, they might be large. We're not doing detailed construction cost estimates because we're still early, but at least understanding the range and the understanding of what these projects might entail is an important piece of that collaboration piece also.
And so as John mentioned, in phase three, we begin to understand we need plans and projects from all these public entities we'll be talking to, understanding how they may work together. So in phase four, we'll start to prioritize. Look at all these plans and projects, think about ways we can move them towards implementation. So this is about UDAS and development priorities and funding strategy. So we'll develop a list of prioritization for key needs and opportunities and create strategies for long-term investment in TPDF funds. So this is building off concepts developed in phase three, building off the community input, what we've heard, feedback in phase three, and we start to put together, okay, here are the priorities the community's told us, and here's the priorities we think make sense from a perspective, from a development perspective, where plans and projects seem to align. With the deliverables here would be a strategic prioritization plan document showing the roadmap for future development, inclusive of an implementation matrix, which would be a matrix showing each plan or project the entity responsible largely for the implementation of that project. And recommended financing strategies, which may include TPF funds and may include other funds as well. And the timeline associated with each planning project going forward to 10 years in the future. Will also include final illustrative site plans, and will also entail a final report presentation to the steering committee, public stakeholders, partners, and the TDA board.
Thanks, guys. So, what does it cost? You've heard about a lot of process here. You've heard about a lot of different ways that we're going to look at this. You know, this is not just a tourism management plan. This is really a tourism management plan that's grounded in a public process and also in a lot of community planning effort as well. And so the 4 phases in terms of their cost align like this. The total going at $440,000. One thing I believe is true, Stephanie, is that we're talking about really funding the first 2 phases.
The budget ordinance in your book is requesting $250,000 in this fiscal year. That would include the professional fees for phase 1 and 2, travel, the cost of public forums, and other support fees. And then we would present the remainder of the project costs in the budget for next fiscal year.
So it's really the first 2 lines of that we're talking about current funding for based on that.
Plus expenses, and so the public hearing today is for $250,000 and to supplement the budget out of the fund balance.
So when I first started traveling here and when I first became familiar with tourism in Asheville, and in particular the TPDF fund, I was very impressed. And we work in a lot of communities that frankly do not have the opportunity to be proactive and to work towards a future like you do here. And as the tourism economy in this community has grown, as it certainly has tremendously since I first came here, I think that this is an opportunity to really build on a very successful program and to shift this in a big way. The site says in a monumental way here, to take a long-term view of this, to think strategically about this, and really come up with the best opportunity here for people who live, work, and visit Buncombe County. So we think there's really an opportunity here to do something that frankly will be viewed very favorably around the country as a great way to do this, a great way to manage tourism, to make it most beneficial for those who live in your community. We really appreciate the opportunity to present this to you today, and I think now we have opportunity for questions.
Yes, absolutely. Anybody have questions? I have one. What's your time frame, implementation time frame now? Just on how long various phases.
Right. It's a little hard to be nails about the timing of this because a lot of the timing elements of this will be out of our control. But the intent is that we would complete this by, let's say, April of 2020, so that we can then enter into the next cycle of TPDF funding. And so we have a kind of a window of opportunity that's been created by the action of the board last fall. So I think that's
great. Thanks, Mike. Any other questions?
First phase is assessment, the third is collaboration, and collaboration is going to be the key here. And I guess assessment needs to cover some of that because we've got different groups that are very different ideas of what we're going to do. You've got the county, you've got the city, you've got tourism group, and I think and you've got everything from building a park, to sidewalks, to affordable housing, to transportation. I think any assessment we've got to nail that down, is to frame it up, say this is what, and get everybody on board, or we'll never get this finished.
Yeah, there's a key moment, in my opinion, at the end of phase 1, where we pull all this together and given a lot of people opportunity for input to raise these kinds of issues we're talking about. And I think that's an opportunity to say, what do these things mean to this process going forward? That's a key moment before we enter into phase 2. So I agree with your comment.
I liked hearing about, I forget the word that was used, but I don't know, potential or something. So there's lots of reports and assessment of everything that's going on and planned meetings for all the groups, which I think are a great way for people to see a map of collaboration. And I was wondering if you'd talk a little bit more about where potential would be, maybe for projects that we haven't even envisioned or that have been tabled due to past understanding or past conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think what you've pointed out is one of the benefits of this process. And in phase 2, where we're doing this discovery idea, if there is a project that, let's say, is latent out there, that isn't currently on anybody's priority list, but probably, has great merit, then this is an opportunity to reevaluate that as well. And I also would characterize this as a creative process. And so, it's a wonderful thing when we can put people together in a different format in a room and start talking about the possibilities that new ideas surface. And especially, I think, getting everyone to work in partnership, all these public entities, I think, I sense, this is my gut telling me that there is significant potential in that process to yield new ideas.
Do you think that would happen in the kind of phase 3, the collaboration? Because there was a lot about, discovery and things that are already kind of existing, so that room for creativity, I'm kind of looking for where that fits.
It should happen in phase 3, but to be honest with you, it could happen in phase 1. I mean, when we start talking to folks, we're not going to so tightly control the conversation that someone couldn't say, hey, what about this, right? And I think we should be open to that. It doesn't mean that we'll fully vet out an idea or study it in phase 1, but we won't lose track of it. And if it happens in phase 2, that's fine too. I think we've done this enough to know that ideas bubble to the surface quickly, and that's fun. That's part of the good part.
The mandates in the legislation is very clear as to what can be done and what can't be done.
That's good.
When all these ideas come forward, these entities that come forward with these ideas, we feel that falls within that legislation or it doesn't, so that's pretty cut and dry.
Yes, it doesn't mean that we won't hear the other ideas and in fact keep track of them. And it would also be true, I think, that this process could yield thinking that would be, okay, the TPDF process or TPDF fund can't address that specifically, but perhaps there's another route to take care of certain items. And again, I think we should be open to hearing those in this process. But I think it's important that we stay focused on the mandate as well.
So it seems like nobody on this board can go out to a social engagement without somebody approaching us with a good idea that they're interested in funding. And that includes my daughter and her husband who lived here 20 years in their 40s, and people on my street, and the guys I play golf with, and that sort of thing. And so I think, all of those ideas have merit, and some of them fall within our bailiwick and some don't. And I think, the interesting thing that struck me about the funding resources was that it might not be all us, it might be part us and part somebody else, or there might even be other kinds of funding sources that could address things that are outside of the screen that we have to look at through the TPDF and the legislation. So I think, it's a service to, not just to us in terms of our fiduciary responsibility, but also to the city and the county in terms of getting everybody on the same page. So
I think it's well said.
I have a question, really just a comment, a couple comments. I just want to appreciate the, I don't know if it's a change or an elevation in the role of that Community Leadership Council. We talked a lot in our small session about, sort of my strong desire to have a lot of community input and having people from the community who are not directly connected to the tourism industry being in a strong position in this, and my sense is that the role of that group may have been elevated or at least fleshed out a little bit more than in that earlier conversation, so I just want to appreciate that. I think, as I said in that session, I think the outcome of this will be stronger, if community people, again, people not connected with the tourism industry can sort of stand with this and support this and say, yes, I was a part of this, and this is good. So I appreciate that. Also, just on behalf of the city, want to say that while this is an evolution in the overall program, I think from our perspective, it's also an evolution in the relationship between the TDA and the city, a very important evolution that brings us together closer together, both more philosophically, but then also, you know, toward on that path to reaching some larger community goals and helping to get projects done that probably wouldn't be able to get done otherwise, at least on any kind of reasonable time frame. You know, the city views this as an opportunity to help leverage the resources that we can bring to the table, and that's really important. And so, you know, it's for us, this is the beginning, not the beginning, but again, an evolution of a much stronger partnership. And I think our hope is that we can sort of stand together at the end of this, arm in arm, singing Kumbaya, and you know, really be able to say this is how we're coming together to help meet a lot of our community goals and implement these really important projects that we know people who live here want to see.
I appreciate that, and I also want to add to that, this is also an opportunity, I think, for the TDA to bring the city and the county together to work on some vital projects, because quite frankly, some of the projects that have been envisioned and been discussed are going to need the support of the county. And so this is an opportunity to bring the county here, which is a very important player in this as well.
Absolutely.
Not to negate the importance of Black Mountain and Williamsville and Woodfin and you know other communities within Buncombe County, but certainly bringing the county to the table and the city to the table at the same time coalesces is a big building upon what you said as well.
So I think you teed my comments up pretty good. My time is limited, I appreciate that. I think one of the things that I've learned as a commissioner being elected to represent a district once I sit up on the board, I learned very quickly that I represented the entire county. And what I challenge your board, and I challenge, you know, this board, you know, and you guys, this is a county tourism fund. It includes all municipalities. It includes the people that are in Sandy Mush, it includes the people that are in Gilmore Forest, it includes the people that are in Farmingville and Bighorn. And so we have to make sure that we're providing equity in the dollars throughout the entire county. And so, you know, for that, I think that this is a path that I think is a good idea. And the county's had to make some difficult decisions in the last year to create strategies that put the county in a sustainable place. And I can tell you, this will not be popular. Anytime you try to do this, then you're going to have people that push back. They don't like it. But it's necessary for, you know, to sustain these funds. It's necessary to a higher mission for the county, one that's not selfish, but represents, you know, everybody. And so that, you know, that's what I have to do, and I see that this is the path towards that. Because there are some major projects that are done in other counties that are much smaller than our county that we should be part of. You know, some people in this room are, you know, think that way. You know, Chip's got, you know, a project that he's been behind, and that thing's building. There's some other ideas. I've heard some other ideas from commissioners that can actually enhance that community and the county. But so I applaud the effort. You know, but there'll be some headwinds, which I know you guys have participated in, ladies have participated in the past. So, but we need to provide, you know, equity within the districts, and you know, that would be my only challenge to the group. And, you know, that is a continual message that I try to put out there. So, but I like the process.
Thanks, Jim. Other questions? Yeah.
I just have a comment, and I'll keep bringing it up, I think. But I've been involved with the TDA in some form or the other, either on the board or on the TBDF for the last 10 years or so. Spent 6 cycles on the TBDF and have really seen the evolution of not only the process, but also the projects that have come forward. I remember the first couple of years on the TBDF, a few projects came in that really just, we looked at them and said, this is not tourism related, And we really have changed the process over the years to really get the applicants to think about tourism and also our community. And we've got a few members of the TPDF board here, and really, when I look at a project, it is on the lens of tourism as well as how does it impact our community, and will it be used by residents, and almost every project we look at has that impact. And to your point, Joe, you know, I agree, and I think John made that, and so did you, that community input is gonna be very critical in this process, to make sure that, yes, we have our voices heard and we have the legislation on one side, we also need to listen, and we also need to take into consideration all the things that are being brought forward to us. I also don't want us to forget that this fund is also used by a lot of local nonprofits as a source for projects that they do, and you can see when we approve the next batch of funding, we've got a whole bunch in there that, you know, that would have to go somewhere else for this fund. So as we go through this process and we're talking to the city and the county, we make sure that we also keep in mind that local nonprofits look at this TPDF dollars as well to fund their projects. That do help tourism, that do help locals. So keep that in mind. And I really, as I look at this, like I look at this as a third phase of TPDF, I'm very excited to see where this goes, to being just giving grants to working with the city, the county, and other nonprofits to actually develop a plan and how to implement it. Because we're not going to be able to build it. We're going to be able to provide fund, some resources to it, but actually the city, looking at the city and the county and the nonprofit community to actually do something with these dollars strategically is going to be very good for our community.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I think your point too, that the TBDF has evolved pretty dramatically over the time that you've seen it in terms of its flexibility and responsiveness to the needs, and we've just gotten smarter on how to accomplish that.
Yeah, and I think what it kind of, you know, we're getting in our budget cycle, and to Machi's point, is very valid. You can't just listen to the loudest voices. You know, we're talking about, you know, people at, you know, functions, and I run into Ingles, and I'm pumping gas, and so we all, depending on where we're at, we do that, but it's the little conversations at the gas station, or the little conversations at dinner with a couple of people that are just as important, you know, as some of the louder conversations. So you gotta reach way out for this to work, and you can't, you know, leave out. That's a challenge at the commission, is that, you know, a lot of people come out for money, but there's people that don't. And they have great, you know, smaller nonprofits, they can make a great contribution, have great ideas, so you really open up and reach out there.
Thanks, Joe. Any other comments on this?
Just real quick, just being on the TPDF board for a few years now, and leading the charge, very proud of what we've accomplished. If you look around in our community and all the different projects we've impacted, and how they've affected our community, I think that's always been on the front of our mind, and I think it's really kind of set us up for this next step, which I think is going to be very important in where we head with these funds. And I'm excited to see, you know, you're starting to see a transformation in conversations with the city and the county. I think that's what we've been hoping for from the TPDF for a while. I think we've had some great projects being placed in front of us recently, but I'm looking forward to the collaboration and the ideas. I think we're going to get much bigger and much more impactful for our community and for tourism-related projects as we all work together. It's funny how many times we're all kind of working in different silos when we should all be working together to come up with the perfect answer for our little destination. It's a great place. We protect, when we're looking at these projects, it's very important to us that our community is there because we live here every day. That's a very important part of our decision-making process. So I just want to endorse this moving forward. I think it's the best way to kind of approach the future of our city. So thank you.
And I'm gonna say this, I'm a hush.
You're getting it all in before you got it.
I had said that. I think, as you go into the legislation, as you look at it, I think we have to remember that as we're developing this, you always have a challenge with the match. So, you can say, well, I've got all these big projects and everything, and then you gotta come to the city or the county or whoever it is, and then, oh, by the way, you need to talk to your taxpayers for $10 million. So you always have that challenge, and so, but there are so many options for that don't, and like in my case, for example, it's commission, that don't directly impact a property taxpayer, with a pool or a larger amount. There's ways to look at that and way to reach out, public, private, other areas to be able to do that, so.
Thanks, Joe.
Can I do one more thing? Sorry, I should have done this before because I think this is the first time here in this room, and I just want to introduce our new city manager, Deborah Campbell, and Deborah, maybe just invite you to offer whatever you would like about this process.
So I'm equally, good morning.
Thank you for
Deborah Campbell.
I didn't tell her I was going to do this.
No. I'm so excited. I cannot actually add anything much more to what Ms. Maxwell has said in terms of the opportunity for the city, county, TDA, community to collaborate, and I think that's what it's about. I said when I came to this community, I hope that I could bring three things: a spirit of collaboration, coordination for collective impact, and that's exactly what I think this process will do. So thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Sorry we missed you in the introduction there. You were sitting behind a couple people. So, if there's no further comments, I want to ask for a motion to accept the proposal as provided by BCTDA. And thank you guys for the presentation. Yes.
I didn't realize you were voting right now. I thought we were voting later, so go for it.
Okay, yeah.
Minority opinion. Members of this board are well aware of my objections to this project. I've expressed them in multiple formats. I'll briefly make 3 points about why I'm disappointed this process is moving forward. Sorry to be a downer. First, it's a huge sum of money to take away from the future TPDF recipients. It's money that would be better spent on projects in our community. For all the money and resources that are being devoted to this process, I'm disappointed that the scope is so narrow. It's not looking at the broader picture of what we should do in our community, but only on what we can do under the current legislation. Asheville's unique place in relation to other tourism boards around the state should be both challenged and changed. Finally, while I hope the process gives the community a better chance to engage in dialogue and help determine some of the priorities moving forward, I fear that at the end we may only make cosmetic changes to the TPDF process that don't help either our hospitality partners or improve our community engagement. For these reasons, I'm not supporting the tourism management as being presented today. Thank you.
Thanks. I know your thoughts are well thought out and strongly felt. We appreciate your input and also your involvement on this board, because I know you're a guy who will go along and be supportive as we move forward and as needed.
And I hope that as we go through this, that we would all keep a little bit of an open mind about the box that we now live in around this money. I mean, we don't know what this process is going to give us. What we do already know is that from the Destination Next study and from our retreat last year that there is consensus around the challenges that our community faces around particularly affordability and transportation and housing. And those things are they're not in our box right now. And but depending on how this process comes out, I hope we would all sort of keep an open mind about whether there need to be changes.
Great. Thank you. Any more there?
One quick thing, I think I agree completely, and I think that the process of changing laws can be different from the timing of making progress otherwise in the resources that you have. So I'd say this is a great step that we can take right now, as opposed to maybe backing up all the way and pursuing a legislative change that might delay this for years and without collaboration.
Yeah, I'm hoping this process is exactly an example of the significant evolution of what the TPDF is capable of doing and will be able to do in the future. So, okay. Now, anyone like to make a motion to accept the proposal? So,
Second.
those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Okay.
Just to clarify on the process, and so you've accepted the proposal. Later in the agenda, you will vote on the ordinance to approve the money. This is a two-step process dictated by statute.
We have a series of, coming up just before we get into some really interesting stuff for 360. I have a series of proposals that will be coming up that we're going to have to deal with. So your patience will be appreciated.
I guess we could go ahead and do that and come back to 360.
Yeah, let's get the
Let's
let's get the administrative, let's get the ugliness out of the way, and then we can have some fun. You guys get your process.
And maybe if we end early, we can also do
That's the toy in the bottom of the box. Okay. Take a little coaching here. Okay, I'm going to open a public hearing to consider the following budgetary amendments and ordinances posted on 215 on the Explore Asheville website. We have to read each one individually. In your books, they're in tab 6. And so I'm going to read each one, and then we'll need a motion and a...
First, we'll do a public hearing on each of those.
Okay.
And then we'll have the two motions. So, okay, we're gonna, Jim's opened the public hearing. We need to read the items A, B, C, and D from the
Budget Amendment A is a budget amendment in the amount of $70,000 to the TPDF administrative budget for wayfinding maintenance approved by the BCTDA on 11/28/18. The second is a budget project ordinance in the amount of $9,485, $9,485,000 to establish a budget for the 6 TPDF projects awarded in the 2018 funding cycle approved by the BCTDA on 11/31/18. The third is the budget project ordinance in the amount of $2,250,000 to establish the budget for the Buncombe County Woodfin Greenway Blueway project approved by the BCTDA on 6/28/17. And finally, the budget amendment in the amount of $250,000 to the TPDF administrative budget to fund the tourism management and investment plan.
And then from the fund balance, we have one.
And from the fund balance, the budget amendment in the amount of $500,000 to supplement the executive office budgetary contingency and marketing contingency budget lines and additional marketing expenses.
And those details are presented in the budget ordinance in tab 6.
So, can I have a motion? Any comments? Okay. No comments, I will close the hearing. Then we will, then I can take a motion.
Sorry.
So, quickly. I feel like a little hand puppet. Now, I'll drink every time he talks. Okay, so could I have a motion to approve the budgetary amendments? All together?
Don's not saying anything, so we're okay. Richard's nodding.
He's got his mouth full.
Yeah, you can approve them separately, or you can approve them in the aggregate.
Okay,
It's totally up to the board.
so can I have a motion to approve all the budgetary amendments?
So moved. Second.
Second? Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Now, action items. Same process. Okay. So I'm going to read the following 4 Tourism Product Development Fund amendments. A budget amendment in the amount of $70,000 to the TPDF administrative budget for wayfinding maintenance. Yeah, we just approved this, or what am I doing?
My apologies. Yeah, well, one is for the public hearing and one's for the motions, but you just approved them as a group, so you can move them backwards.
community day, and I'm there, so it'll be good.
Okay. Now,
Now
to the
the
fun
fun
stuff.
stuff.
360i,
$9 million is fun, Mark.
who we love and absolutely blew us away in the competitive presentation earlier in the year. Really a great firm, so I'm going to ask them to come up and do their presentation. Yes,
And while
Mark.
they're getting set up, I just wanted to introduce them. Of course, we're very excited here at Explore Asheville and on the marketing team to have them on board. They have been doing yeoman's work in terms of just getting a lot of information out of the pipeline and into into formats where we will be ready to go to market with an ad campaign. In March, they're going to share some of the conceptual pieces around that at this point, a little bit about the strategy. And so we're really happy that David Rollo, who is the managing director with 360i, is here today, along with Angie Arner, who's the strategy director. And they're going to walk you through the conceptual piece of our spring ad campaign, as well as some of the positioning and audience factors that they've taken into account as part of launching this campaign. So I'll turn it over to them. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Marlon. First of all, I'll say that we're quite excited to be here for our first board meeting, Angie and I. But more so than that, we're honored to have your time, your attention, and your trust and partnership for what we're about to do together. It's been a long journey of getting to know one another, and we're excited about the roads that lie ahead. A little bit about us before I hand the clicker over to Angie and talk a little bit more about the positioning of what we're about to do in spring. Is 360i is focused on brands, tourism, to help capitalize on change. Change is omnipresent. It doesn't really take a break, and we're well positioned to stay in front of that. Our culture is that of passion and curiosity, and we try to stay ahead of every industry that we see out there. We're a culture of makers and believers that there's something new out there, and we leverage data, technology, and insights to help us do that. This isn't just your standard agency we win awards slide. I think it stands for a lot more than just looking at some of the logos that are up there that you might have seen before, Adweek and Forrester, and some of the other ones down here that are Clio Lions. What it means to me is that our diverse offering is being welcomed and acknowledged in several categories. We're not just Forrester's search, paid and owned lead agency for the last 8 years running. We're more than that. We're paid social agency of the year. We're agency of the year. We're focused in other areas of technology that help us get some of these accreditations. And that's really, I go back to, and I'll say it again, our passion and curiosity for the businesses that we work for and the people that we work with. In all of our offices, we can swivel a chair around and talk to any one of our different discipline leads, right? Whether it be search, social, new categories that we're bursting into with voice technology, and we all live under one roof. It's this passion and curiosity that brings me to this rotary phone-like graphic, which dates myself. But it just shows what is encompassed in a quote-unquote full-service agency. It's anything that you can imagine, but the real heart of this slide is really at the center. We're strategically led and we're data-driven. And it's the same approach that we took when we first read the RFP for Asheville Travel and Tourism. We wanted to get deep into the data. We wanted to get deep into the insights of the people that are coming here on a yearly basis, hopefully more often. We're working on it. But we didn't want to take anything at face value, and we run those numbers and we come up with really unique opportunities for us to grab hold of as we start to work together and launch in the spring. And she's going to talk through some of that. I think the last commonality they'll talk about that I think is an important one between everybody in this room and everybody within Asheville and our agency is people. The people are the heart of what does this, right? It's just not, the machines haven't taken over yet. I mean, it's coming. But I think that the heart of the people on our side of the fence is truly important. As the leader of our Atlanta office, I can't tell you how many people in our office came up to me and said, Rollo, how do I get into the Asheville business? How can I help with the pitch? They've been here before. They've experienced the magic that Asheville is, and they want to be part of it.
So you have the best of the best on our team across all of our offices that are involved in this. Everybody on the team has been to Asheville, not just once in a boardroom, but be here to experience what you have to offer. We can't create what others want to come to and invest in with their time, with their families, if we don't experience ourselves. So please know that that's very, very important to us. And every time we come here, even us, we stay in a different hotel, go to a different restaurant, and experience everything that we have around us. I worked out at a nine-round fitness center yesterday and met the owner. So we're committed to the business and the people that are driving the business within Asheville as well. With that, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Computer's not gonna take my job. Strategy, so as Marla said, I'm the strategy director on the account. Have a big team that's not here, so I will try to do my best to represent their thinking. But some of you have seen a little bit of this, and some of you haven't. So I'm going to give kind of a high-level overview of what we're going forward with and what we pitched a few months ago now. So we got the assignment for spring specifically, and it was really based in your business objective and how do we increase overnight visitation in Asheville and Buncombe County. So it was great to have such a finite or such a conclusive business objective, but it was really, there's a lot packaged in there, right? So like every good plan, we started with the audience, and again, what you're going to see is a high-level view of a ton of data analysis and rigor, but essentially what we got to was an audience understanding that was really based on a foundation of the existing audiences you guys already had. So we worked with the segmentation you guys commissioned a while back and advanced that. And then in that process that I'll explain in a minute, we found an additional 20 million people to target. And I'll caveat that with, this isn't just people interested in travel. These are people interested in traveling to Asheville. They're very qualified, and we want to make sure that we're bringing in the right visitors. So a little bit about that audience process that laid the groundwork for the strategy. What we're able to do, we have a partnership with Hitwise, and they have a tool where we're able to actually pull in people who are searching and clicking on Asheville related terms. So in this case, we wanted to make sure that it was people searching for or clicking on ads for search results for Asheville hotels, overnight Asheville, downtown, things like that. So again, making sure that they're really qualified. Now all of those people get pulled into this tool here, and we segment them. And what's really great is that the segmentation that Hitwise uses is the same segmentation that you guys have used in the past. So we were able to then match those people with your existing customers, or your existing consumers, excuse me. So through that process, as I said, we identified a ton more people, and we actually added like 15 more segments. But then what we were able to do is we were able to sort of cluster them in some smart analytical way that was with the analytics team into super clusters, and then we're also able to export them into M1, which is a proprietary platform that Dentsu uses to actually be able to target on a one-to-one basis these people. So it's not just sort of a conceptual segmentation, we're actually able to really pay off the audience work. So as I said, we have a ton of segments. The analytics and insights team statistically grouped these segments into what we're calling super clusters. So again, the segmentation that you guys originally had really held true in a lot of these, and you can see those reflected in gray. But we also brought in some new audiences that were really apt to visit Buncombe County. So those are in green, you can see here. And again, the super clusters are statistically grouped to make sure that we're going after like people. So this is again going to be the base for all of our audience targeting, and I can explain a little bit to you about how they're different. So this is your biggest audience here, is your base audience. They consist of these 5 segments, and they're really who we're thinking of as sort of the core, right? We're going to use most of our dollars to target them. This isn't too different than the segmentation we've been going after. They're super affluent, so they have a lot of money to spend here. They have a high cultural alignment and they're really active outdoors. They have a passion for travel.
growth audience here. So this is where we see an opportunity to bring in more people. So you'll see a few new segments here. They're also spending a lot on travel, and they have a high cultural alignment. So this is a group we're going to start to build into the into the marketing. And then third here, you'll see a test audience. So this is an audience which has a really high cultural alignment with Asheville, and those are like all the things that Asheville has to offer, like the hiking, outdoors, downtown, nightlife, music, all those sorts of really close passion alignment, but they might not have as much money to spend. So how can we just start to test into that and understand who's right for staying overnight? So you'll see some tactics down the line as far as how do we just start to test into those, but it'll be really hyper-targeted digital social efforts.
One thing just to add on is that I talked about capitalizing on change. It's a big change that now millennials are in their mid-30s with families and looking for places to go on vacation. So when we look at the new opportunities that are up there, some of that is reflected in those new kind of passions and interests that we're constantly staying on top of.
So this is high-level overview. What is now being worked on is a deep dive into each of these audiences, so we can understand all of their channel behaviors, all of their psychographic behaviors, everything that would drive them to click, visit, etc. So we can really make sure to action on them. So that is the audience piece. That's the underlying foundation. And then what I do is I come in and I take all this information and I have to make it mean something. I have to make sure I come up with the right answer as to how we're going to use this to actually communicate with people and get the right people in visiting overnight. So again, lots of data involved in this process, lots of research. We did both quant and qual, and you'll see again a summary of that thinking. So as we went into this process, we really thought about what Rolo was saying. Just Asheville is a really, really special place. We all felt that, and we have a really tough job to do as far as increasing demand and visitation. So we also found that people were tending to just kind of pass through the area on a bigger trip. They're usually doing one or two things, and the easiest solution that we possibly could have brought to you guys was, oh, they're just doing a couple things, you should do more things, right? But you're gonna end up being like a St. Louis campaign, you're gonna end up being like a whole lot of other tourism campaigns that are frankly trite and cliche and not very inspiring. And we know that Asheville is about a feeling, and I think Marla, or actually I think it was Stephanie that said in the first chemistry test session, Asheville is has this indescribable feeling, and we haven't quite gotten that yet. And so we took that as a challenge, as really, that's what we have to do. We can't just tell people to do more things and therefore stay longer. We really have to try to describe that feeling and unlock that true potential of the brand that is Asheville. So we did a lot of video interviews. What we're able to do, this is a tool called InstaPanel, and what we're actually able to do is recruit people that closely match the segments that you saw earlier. So we're actually talking to those people. And we asked them a bunch of questions about travel, we asked them a bunch of questions about Asheville, as well as demographic information. And what we learned through that is the beginning of something really interesting, which is that they don't need more things to do. Everyone's so busy. There are boxes that they're checking every single day. And even on a vacation, they don't want more boxes to check. They don't just want to make sure that they're doing Asheville or doing whatever destination that they're going to. And alternatively, what we saw is when you ask them about Asheville, there's this whole other answer that they're getting, and their eyes light up, and they say, when I was there, it was so liberating, and I felt like I could be myself, and there was no one judging me. And the respondents, a great deal of them said they got this feeling of release and freedom. And that was really what we started playing with is this sort of ability to be your most authentic self when you're here. And that started to feel really right. But again, we're super nerds, and we wanted to make sure that we were validating everything with hard data. So what we did is we looked back at the initial audience work, and what we're able to do is take all the psychographic statements, like the attitude statements, group them together by themes, so that's what these themes are right here, and motivators, play out in the fall. So while they were drawn to be motivated by things like achievement and pragmatism, they were equally drawn to things like idealism and expression, which just proves to us there's this internal battle happening, right? There's battle between the head and the heart, and right now the head is winning out, and we want to make sure that the heart wins out. Things like this are motivating them. Which led us to this insight around the fact that they really want a liberating experience, one that will help them return to their most authentic selves. They just need the permission and the encouragement to do that. And that starts to create a role for the Explore Asheville brand, right? So all of that led to a new positioning that we're calling that Asheville area is a place for free spirits. And this again gets to the fact that you feel a sense of release here. You're visiting yourself. You're not just visiting Asheville. You're not just checking a bunch of boxes. And this started feeling really exciting to everyone on the team when we started kind of throwing around this language of being a free spirit. It also, I think, really reflects the local community and starts to bring in things that the team over here will do as far as bringing that spirit to life and making sure that it's reflected in the visitation. So the positioning naturally leads to what you do with the positioning, and that's the role of Explore Asheville and giving travelers permission to let their spirit run free. So this is a strategy line. Some of you have seen a strategy line before, and what you'll see in future work is making sure that you know exactly what this means. What does giving permission mean? What does letting your spirit run free mean? And how does that actually come to life in each channel of marketing? But we didn't want to get into all those specifics in the pitch. What we wanted to do is really try to articulate the feeling. Again, this is all about the feeling of the Asheville area and how we can bring that to life. So we did something a little bit risky because the team said, don't bring any creative work, and we said, okay, but no. What we did was we sort of developed this manifesto that really tried to illustrate the feeling that we were trying to create. Think of it as a video mood board. It's not an ad, not even close to an ad. It's like people on our team that are doing voiceover, not professional voice actors. But what we really want to do is try to articulate, like, here's what we really mean. Here's like the verbiage that we're starting to think about around what this even means out in the world. And so what you'll see is that manifesto video that we showed. Some of you may have seen this before.
Welcome back. Nice to see you again.
We know there's a lot keeping you from yourself, but we're glad you're taking the time to come and reconnect with the thing that's inside all of us.
That free spirit that, whether you know it or not, is waiting to be set free.
Because here in Asheville, we don't just rely on landmarks like other cities, even though we have them.
And we don't just rely on experiences, even though we have those.
What we have to offer is not something visitors can see on an afternoon tour.
It's a collection of sparks that ignite the flame of confidence, giving you permission to be your true self.
A mix of random inspiration, open-hearted acceptance, and good food.
All coexisting in a beautiful, judgment-free city.
Where the best activity we have is rediscovering what it means to embrace the best part of yourself.
And enthusiastically share it with those around you.
Up here in the mountains, we've crafted the perfect recipe for anyone who has grown weary of the everyday grind.
And offer travelers what they've wanted all along.
A chance to spend time with the most authentic version of themselves.
Welcome to the Asheville version of yourself.
Welcome to Asheville.
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 Come hang out. Let your spirit run free.
So, I mean, all of these words are really intentional. We're playing with a lot of lines and scripting in the spring campaign, but things that you'll start to see come forward are things like hanging out, and that's really intentionally around the fact that it takes time to let your true self come out, and that means you need to stay a little bit longer in Asheville. So a lot of this through the future work, but this was just sort of an early articulation of how we felt about this platform. You're gonna see a lot more creative work in the next couple months, but really what we want to do is talk about, then now we have this great foundation of an audience that feels really actionable and are really quality visitors, and now we have this really unique, ownable feeling that we can use to describe Asheville, and a strategy for how to do that. So how do we actually start to implement that with the spring campaign? We're really thinking of the spring campaign as laying the foundation for some of this new thinking. So we'll talk a little bit about the paid media plan. Sorry, I'll try to use non-market speak because it gets really complicated. But we'll talk a little bit about the media plan, a little bit about the creative work and how they're approaching it as well.
We'll have more to share on that on the website in March as well. But to start this, we look at market recommendations. I won't go too involved, or too geeky, but we do have a methodology in scaling what the opportunities are for us. Right. So when we look at new markets, are we looking at direct flight cities? Are we looking at drive cities? Has that changed? I think now Dallas has a direct flight. So we're looking at all of these things that are happening for us. We're weighting them against key criteria of distance, interest from a search index. So going back to what Angie was saying earlier, have people been online looking for visiting Asheville or hotels in Asheville, et cetera? So we skew that all and we look at the opportunity index to the right, and leads us to this lovely list over here. We'll start with the new market recommendations, and I'll add a little bit of rationale besides some of them. When we look at people like Birmingham, they're just over about 5 hours away, and they are a newly growing market. They're focused on food and downtown nightlife from a community perspective, and I think that's going to bring a lot of the right folks here for more overnight stays moving forward. Same goes for Columbus, Ohio. A little bit further away, but still, when we look at a spring campaign, it's kind of dreary and cold still in Ohio. So we're definitely going to focus on these markets that have less than pleasing weather, and put our spring efforts there. That's one of the rationalizations of why we're recommending not advertising within Florida for spring. Florida's pretty nice in spring. So I spend our marketing dollars there to encourage someone that's harder get to come visit Asheville, and let's look at some of these other markets that are experiencing the same kind of weather booms in springtime for us. When we look at New York and Chicago, those are very big markets. We're just going to be looking at digital and maybe some social opportunities there. Those are direct flight markets, and those are more of our testing markets to see what we can get from a little bit further away. Going back to the weather side, still kind of cold and dreary up in the north. When we look at Greenville, Spartanburg, those will also be just digital focused markets, very tightly targeted, both in proximity as well as with the creative that we put into that marketplace, with the right messaging for that area to drive overnight stays and just not that daily visit that's so easy for somebody in that market. I think when we look at our existing targets, those have proven to be successful for us year over year. So those are our proven performers, and we don't expect them to act any differently, hopefully a little bit better, as we tweak some of our different channel marketing strategies as we launch into spring.
Can I ask you a question here?
Please.
So you're not targeting part of the spring, but there's still a tremendous number of great lights
Most definitely.
here which we need to support as well.
Yes.
So just like some more thought on that. And how would they rate on your scale up there?
How does Florida rate on the scale? In spring?
On this scale, yeah.
I don't have that in here, so I can't really tell you where they fall. I don't have the original chart. I can go back and pull that out for us so we can look at it. Florida's going to skew high because of the direct flight and proximity to us. It's really the weather component that's saying let's save our dollars just for spring. They're still a very focused market for us throughout the year.
Yeah, a little hint at what you'll see in March is a full year rollout. So you'll see how our market recommendation changes season by season, audience changes season by season, etc. So
just wanna, I'm sure you guys know this, but I wanna say this, that for, when we're looking at the county itself, a lot of hotels are on the interstate outside of the core downtowns, the central business district. We do depend on a lot of traffic that is overnight visitation that just spend the night here and then go to their destination. So they are driving, a lot of folks are driving from Florida, going north, and they do stop here one night. Same thing, coming back. So I do want to keep that in mind that Interstate 26 and 40 bring a lot of visitors that are just maybe spending overnight, but they're staying in hotels that are right off the interstate. And we have 4 hotels in
No agree on that.
And Salancho, I think the addition of another Ohio market helps with that as
Yes, it
well.
does.
And then, of course, you've got Nashville has been a strong performer for us. So that traffic, of course, is coming from the west. So I think that the configuration of this is also going to bring people from multiple origin cities using those different routings into this community.
until 40 is closed for the rock slide.
Only for a week.
We can't control that.
And I think part of our role here too is, we're not just thinking about your advertising, we're thinking about communications holistically. So what are the other things that are not advertising that we can do from a paid, from an owned and earned standpoint too? So maybe there's some things there.
Angie,
Yeah,
Oh,
just
sorry.
as we're talking about, not specifically about that slide, which I don't really understand, but it also doesn't matter that I understand. Just as we're talking about things to keep in mind, flights and overnight visitors, as you said, words matter, and I just want to flag a couple of words. I know what you mean, but people who aren't in this room won't know what you mean. But you, and I don't remember who said it, but a couple times I've heard that we're trying to attract the right people and quality visitors, which implies that there are wrong people and not quality visitors.
Yes.
And I think we don't want to do that. That's not. We're a non-judgmental city, as your ad said. So I just think just as you talk about that.
Julie, can I build on that for a second to, provide that clarification? Because one of the things we talk about all the time is providing people who are a good fit for the cultural values of Asheville and for the businesses that we have.
Yes.
And so I agree with you, it's easy to interpret right versus wrong as economically driven or some way through that lens, but what we mean by that is that visitors that appreciate what Asheville is and what Asheville offers.
and are respectful to our culture.
Yeah, and I'm totally with that. I don't, again, people who aren't
Thanks
here
for
and
raising
didn't
that.
hear that.
That's a good point. Yeah, and again, from just a paid perspective, we think of it as we want to make sure that we're not just blanketing the market with a message and just sort of buying clicks. We want to make sure that we're talking to the right people, and the right people being, are they more apt to visit Asheville? Do they have that alignment with the passions of Asheville?
And so probably the better word here is targeted. Hyper-targeted to these audiences that feel like they do have this fit and respect the culture and are a good fit for what we have to offer here. And so I think that's what Angie's really trying to say.
The other thing I would say is, I hope in the spring ad that you won't use pictures of fall. All the pictures that you showed there, they're not gonna fall.
No, and this was, a lot of these slides were pulled from a presentation that was done earlier in the year, but that wasn't about spring, it was about the entire, what their approach would be in general.
A lot of QA will happen. Okay, so talking a little bit more about the media plan. So the strategy, again, is meant to inform not only creative but paid media. So the team is approaching the paid media plan from sort of a two-pronged perspective. One is thinking about the traditional channels and how we can probably rethink them a little bit, rethink their role, and make sure that we're really unleashing that feeling of letting your spirit run free. The second is around being hyper-targeted, as Marla said, and making sure that we're intercepting audiences that have the passion points with the right message at the right time. So you'll see a little bit about how we plan to do that. From the first prong of the strategy, we really want to take a good look at your media mix and make sure that we're doing the right things to start to unleash this feeling. So you'll see a mix that's a little bit different. This is just for spring, this isn't for your year. So you'll see a couple shifts. Now, I'll start with video and TV. TV is still hugely important, and video SEO in general for this positioning, this platform is very important. But what we did is we looked at the TV strategy, and we made sure that we found efficiencies, and we're looking at each individual market specifically and being really smart about our approach to that. And so in doing that, we found some savings, $1 million in fact, that we were able to reinvest into other channels that can work a little bit harder for you. So TV is still very much important, but maybe but focusing a little more on the effectiveness of TV. We are actually growing your digital spend somewhat significantly, and I think this will be sort of a trend of the future. We're really, again, trying to make sure that we're being really precise with our targeting. We're able to do some really sophisticated things, and also really importantly, learn. So digital channels allow us to learn a lot about who is engaging and draw some inferences as to why, and we can apply that to future campaigns. We're also increasing your social budget, so we know that this is another really important place to get that grow and test market, audience as well. And we can really target those passion points as well as geos. And then we're complementing the mass awareness of things like TV with audio. So we're making sure that we're looking at radio not just from a traditional standpoint, but a digital standpoint as well. So we'll go into places like Spotify and streaming radio. So there's some fun things that we're going to do with radio, DJ reads, and something that feels a little more tailored, personalized, have a first-person perspective, things like that. So really coming at traditional channels from a more strategic point of view. And then you'll see print on here as well. So your smallest piece of the budget, print, this was a previous commitment that we're maintaining, but you might see that starts to peel back over time as we look to more targeted and learning opportunities. I think overall, with regards to this part of the strategy, is we want to make sure that we're being in places of sight, sound, and motion to make sure that, again, that new position becomes more really clear.
As you'd expect, this is fluid, right? We follow performance. We just don't follow the data. So as we get into market and see what performance is, that's where we can have some budget fluidity around what discipline and what action drives the most results for us.
Yeah, and again, this is just spring, so the future seasons will look a little different depending on what we see happen in spring. So as a result of this readjustment and making sure that we're thinking about how to use your dollars really efficiently, we are able to make your $5 million feel like $8 million. And that's because we're able to, through this channel reallocation, really boost up some really core brand metrics, which are purchase intent, and that can be read as intent to book a stay, and brand preference. So those key points and those lists are going to bring a lot of value to the plan.
And Angie, can I just bring a point of clarity to the television piece too, where you talked about finding that additional $1 million? What they were able to do was identify the point of diminishing return with the TV buy, where you just were not seeing the weight generate any more interest or potential visitation. And so by pulling back on that spend a little bit and still getting up to the point, that's where some of this reshifting of dollars is occurring that is helping, switch this plan in a way that gives it more oomph.
Yeah, we're not getting any less from TV. In fact, we're just saving. Great. So making the money work. Oh, there's an animation. So we have all the groundwork laid. Then we look at specific channels and make sure that they're each doing what they need to do within the plan and the objectives. So you can see a little bit of a tease for the media plan. This is highlight. There's a lot more tactical detail coming. In fact, the team's going to see it later this afternoon. But essentially, we're using, again, those higher reach channels like audio and video to really start to lay the foundation to this new positioning. How do we start to get people understanding what Let Your Spirit Run Free means? And all of this, again, is to learn. So we want to try to understand if there's correlation between our activity in these channels and election demand. Then when it comes to things like digital and social, we're taking the approach, again, of making sure that we're actioning on those audience segments you saw earlier. So we're ensuring that we're choosing creative that's tailored to those people, targeting them, and learning. So not just learning about who they are, but what they engage with. And if we have to update sort of content buckets, if we have to update digital partners. We're going to do, again, teaser for you to see later. We're proposing working with TripAdvisor, Curved, and Eater, as well as a lot of programmatic partners who are able to be really, really digitally targeted against those passion points in the bigger programs that we're considering. And then social, as I said, we're amping up social a little bit over last year and making sure that we're, again, like sectoring out the audience and content. And we're going to be on Facebook and Instagram doing that in a variety of different formats. So the creative approach. As I mentioned, this is a transition period. We're wanting to get some of this new thinking out in market. It's all in the sort of effort to learn and grow and build on it. So I want to just outline a little bit about how the creative team is thinking about this upcoming spring campaign. So overall, actually I'm going to go to point 2 here. When we talk about spring, we don't want to feel like a car dealership and say it's the spring thing and now spring Asheville, and then in summer we say summer plus Asheville, so on and so forth. We want to make sure that we're really using spring as the opportunity to talk about this feeling everybody feels. This, you're in a cocoon, you know, you're not feeling so great, and you just need to get out. You're feeling spring fever. You're feeling that need to let your spirit run free even more than ever. So it's a perfect opportunity to launch. So we want to make sure that we're talking about things like renewal, rediscovery, freedom, expression, but we're not saying spring. At least in sort of top line or high level communications. So that's one thing that the team's really thinking about. And then with regards to asset development, we're really taking the entire library suite of assets that you guys have, combing through them and making sure that we're identifying what are the right images that align with this positioning, what is the design style we want to bring that doesn't feel too different than what you've done before, and updating the copy to, again, start to plant that seed. So you'll see assets in the spring campaign, which we'll show you next month, that will have, you know, some of this new language, but things aren't going to feel that different, at least for this first campaign.
And part of that is because we have such a tight time frame to be able to pull off the spring campaign. So when we walked into this this partnership with 360i, we knew that we would not be able to execute on new footage, new imagery at this juncture, and that we would be able to do some adaptive reuse, if you will, of our existing assets. And so that's what they're going to be doing for us, along with, you know, again, this positioning is a little bit of a trying to capture that essence of the indescribable, as Angie indicated. And so the learnings that will come out of this spring campaign will kind of determine the future of how we pull that through. And so there will be some great opportunities to understand how this is resonating with the customer, and then how we can mold that into a bigger, potentially a bigger brand positioning moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. So you touched on the assets. One of the existing assets we're using is a few video assets. So while we won't be changing the editing too much, we're going to make sure that we groom through those, attach a new VO. I'll tell you a little bit about the VO. Refresh the music, and make sure that we're really coming at it from, we're sort of cosmetically changing it to introduce that platform. So this is a few, just again, kind of mood board images that we're starting to think about as we curate the right thing. You know, things that convey the sense of place, things that don't not only reflect but respect diversity of the area and play on multiple passion points. Again, like, the team is really over-analyzing every image and make sure, like, is this representative of someone that's letting their spirit run free? Does this reflect diversity? Is this really conveying the right thing that we want about Asheville? And as I said, we're taking a new look at the scripts. So this is a work in progress, but you can just sort of start to see the language changes. And one of the things you'll see is that it's a little bit shorter. So as part of this positioning around letting your spirit run free, we can't rush through that. That's not something that you feel like you need to get a lot in 30 seconds or 15 seconds. So we want to make sure the pacing is right. We take a little time with the spot, and we start to bring it in that language that we went over earlier. You know, welcome back. Somewhere you've been before. Asheville. Come hang out, let your spirit run free. And then the URL. So quick note on the URL, we are proposing a custom landing page for everyone who's on either clickable or non-clickable media to